Hello and welcome back to the brand new Boxing Social podcast with me, your host, Rob Tebbutt. We've been away for a little while, but we're back bigger and better than ever. Welcome to episode 20 of the Boxing Social podcast. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everybody to please follow, subscribe, turn those notifications on for all of the latest boxing talk. I am joined once again by the one and only Ade Oladipo. The regular. He has returned despite now being on DAZN and Sky and TalkSport and of course Boxing Talk with Ade. Don't forget to subscribe.
Thank you very much. Hit that subscribe button.
He has remained loyal to the social.
Oh, without a doubt. It wasn't even. What was their fault that I might not?
I don't know, mate. You're getting big time now. I remember there was a time when I used to be able to message you and you'd be able to get back to me straight away. Now you're on air. You're busy with Tony Bellew and Maya Jammer. And
Hey, the latter. Yeah, you're right. No, look. Firstly, congratulations on this amazing setup now. To be fair, I thought the other setup was pretty good anyway, but now, as you say, you've gone bigger and better than ever, and you certainly have. This is sick, and I'm happy to come down and to hold the WBC belt, which I don't know where it is anymore.
So we've got it here. So this is sent by my friend, Mr. Mauricio Suleiman over at the WBC.
Never been so jealous in my life.
The official Boxing Social podcast belt.
Sick.
So anybody who comes on the Boxing Social podcast, you get your hands on a WBC replica world title belt.
I thought he was going to say something like, you get one.
No.
I thought it was like, you get one. Like little, maybe they give the medals. They give those little medals at the end of the fight.
Yeah.
No one wants. I thought he was going to get one of those.
Robson Conceição got one.
Yeah. And now he's asking for the fight to be looked at again.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
100%.
Anyway, nice to see you. Let's talk a little bit about you before we get started. You're doing very, very well. It's always great to see good people in boxing doing well. There's too many bad people doing well in boxing.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about the last few months. It's been a real roller coaster ride for you. We've obviously seen you on DAZN and continue to do your thing on TalkSport and what have you.
Yeah.
Describe the last 3 months or sum it up if you can.
Been busy, especially with DAZN. Like DAZN, I didn't even expect. Look, when Matchroom said they're going to link up with DAZN and DAZN are going to kind of then create their own UK stable, I was like, okay, fair dues, you know. And then a few people, kind people, started saying, okay, get Ade Oladipo involved. I started seeing it on Twitter and I was like, oh, something might happen here. But at the same time, I wasn't going for it. Like I didn't necessarily care about it, if I'm blunt. You know, I was doing my thing on TalkSport. I've got a little boxing show there, obviously the green chair. And I was like, that's almost enough. And I also didn't want that issue of, because I know what I'm like on the green chair. I kind of say what I want. And I was like, well, if you work for someone, it's difficult to then critique them. And that's a very thin line. So I was like, you know what, I don't want. And then I saw the lineup of Maya Jam and Laura Woods, and I was like, I'm in, sold. Where do I sign? But no, someone reached out to me and said, look, Ade, we've got an opportunity for you. Initially, it was only supposed to be a magazine show with Tony Bellew every Wednesday. And then it just kind of blossomed into what it is now, which is sort of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday before the fights, and then Saturday as well. So, look, it's good. Who knows how long it's going to last? Who knows what these things do? But so far, so good, and I've enjoyed it. Obviously, we've got a couple of big fights coming up, and it's good to be involved in them. Yeah,
it's great, and you're doing a really good job as well. As I say, it's always great to see somebody like yourself.
Cheers,
I mean,
dude.
we spoke at the start of the pandemic about how things were, it's going into too much detail. You go into as much as you want, but things weren't, how they are for you now.
Yeah.
And, hard work and perseverance and what have you has led you to where you are. So congratulations.
Thank you, man. You're right. It was tough at the start. Everyone's been through it, right? I mean, we've all got sort of ups and downs, but yeah, it was difficult. And then you just continue to kind of just keep going. I guess, what can you do, right? I mean, you can either put a full stop in it or you can pause, reassess, and just keep going. And I think TalkSport opened a few doors, and I'm very thankful for them to give me my own show. And then with that now, DAZN, and you just keep going, you just keep trying. But these are the things that I love more. I always said it, like these things where you kind of feel like you can just breathe a bit and say what you want to say because you say what you want to say. You know what I mean? Say what you want to say and get an opportunity to really just speak. Because I do kind of feel like you still are restricted. As much as I feel like I want to say what I want to say on DAZN, you're still restricted regardless, and on TalkSport. So when I do my own show, or when I come on this podcast, you kind of feel like you can just breathe. And that's why I love coming on. That's why I was always going to come on, Rob. I was always going to answer your call, Rob. I promise you.
I had to pull all sorts of favours to get him into that. I'm still waiting for Joe Markovsky or Eddie Hearn to drop me a little bit of compensation for stealing our regular podcast co-host, but we'll see how we get on. But anyway, let's move on. We are, of course, only a matter of days away from a big heavyweight fight. Anthony Joshua versus Joshua-Usyk, the unified heavyweight titles at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Are you going to be working the fight? Who are you going to be working for?
I'm working for DAZN, obviously, that they have the global rights.
Yeah.
So they are calling all their American people are coming over. Kate Abdo's coming over, Akam Baraka. I think they're here already, Todd Grisham, Roy Jones. But I'm lucky to still be involved in it. So, yeah, that's good. That was a big boost for me. I can't lie. Like, say, okay, Ade, we still want you involved doing it. So we've still got the shows on Thursday and Friday, and then we've got a big show on Saturday as well. So, yeah, lucky to be involved. Just lucky to be there. I mean, look, we've met each other at a few big events, and sometimes you feel like, yes, you're working, but to be there and to be ringside watching these events is still something I pinch myself. So, yeah, I am there, and I can't wait to get involved.
That's great. Let's just touch upon the fact that you recently went up to Sheffield, caught up with the big man himself, Mr. Anthony Joshua, played some table tennis.
Played a bit of table tennis. Had to show him.
Did you win?
Won. The point I put up on my Instagram, I won, but I lost the first fight.
Yeah,
he's pretty good.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised.
He's pretty good. I didn't realize he was that good, and I was like trying to take it easy on him. I thought, I can't beat the champ. And then I want him to, be cool and mentally ready for the fight. But then he started. I was like, okay, we're going up on that level. Let's do this. So I only won a point, but good fun. He looks relaxed. I mean, it's funny because the DAZN bigwigs were there, and they're like, obviously, he might be a bit tense and this. And I was like, it should be all right. I didn't know if he knew it was going to be me that was interviewing him. And then when he saw it was me, I feel like he just calmed down a little bit because it's not going to be the grilling that maybe or the boring questions that he's used to from sort of other sort of journos, so to speak. And then he was relaxed. It was a fine, good little hour conversation. He does look a bit lighter and leaner. And I said, look, dude, you do look smaller. And there's always that question about your weight because of the Carlos Takam fight and the Ruiz 2 fight where he came in really light. And he's like, look, right now it's not the focus. The focus is we're training hard, and if it comes off, it comes off. But I do believe the focus is to come in a bit lighter, right? But he looks in good spirits. He looks and sounded super confident for what I feel is going to be his toughest fight. Like, he sounded as though, like, this ain't going to be a tough fight. He had that kind of confidence, and some might say that's arrogance. I just feel like him and his team have obviously got a good game plan together. Sparring's gone well, and he just looks really ready to rock and roll. I think he had a sparring session the day I met him, and I think he's just good to go now. It really is.
Yeah, it's interesting you would say that because I agree with you. I think personally this is the toughest opponent of Anthony Joshua's career so far. I know a lot of people are talking about Vladimir Klitschko. Yeah. Vladimir Klitschko was, he was 40 years old or 41 years old, 18 months of inactivity, coming off the back of that loss to Fury. Still a great fighter, obviously a Hall of Famer, Vladimir Klitschko, but not the prime Vladimir Klitschko by any stretch of the imagination. And you kind of look at the other guys that he's faced, and while he has a very good resume for the heavyweight division, it is missing the Tyson Furies, the Deontay Wilders of this world, 100%. Of course, which we'll obviously come on to later. But I really do think, and this is a fight that I've wanted to see for a long time, Usyk versus Anthony Joshua. And it's a fight that Usyk's wanted for a long time. 2 Olympic gold medalists, a former undisputed champion against a unified champion.
Crazy.
While it's not Joshua Fury, while a lot of people were looking forward to that and wanted to see that, it's still a brilliant fight.
It's fantastic. And I think maybe that's the issue for some people, that it's not AJ Fury. But as a backup option, there's not many backup options better than that, right? AJ versus Usyk's, it's scary. And as an AJ fan, it scares me. The fight scares me a bit because it's gone in my head. I've played this fight out so many times, and I've played out AJ just getting outboxed and potentially stopped. Like, honestly, I've played that out, and I've played out AJ sort of running through him. Like, okay, too big, too strong. And, I go back and watch the Usyk Bradis fight, the Usyk Hunter fight. I'm like, okay, he's good, but he's not as good as everyone makes him out to be. Just because I think a lot of people are maybe high on the Gassiev performance, which was a great performance, and maybe Tony Bellew, especially a lot of casual fans. And I think you maybe have to watch a bit of his other work. But he's such a smart fighter. Like, I did a little sit down with Tony Bellew for DAZN. We did like a little playback where we're I'm literally asking Bellew questions about the fight every round after round. And Bellew was like, physically, not intimidating, but he said mentally, it was so tiring because he's doing things, Usyk, and he's having to keep up. And it's almost like, he said it was like mental chess in his head where he thinks he's had a good round, but he knows that Usyk's just almost playing around with him. And he said after round 4, he said mentally, not physically, but he said mentally, I just couldn't keep up. It was almost too much for me. And that's my one fear of AJ, like mentally, when Usyk starts doing things that, when they say little phrase like going through the gears or just switch, can AJ compete with that? That's what scares me about this fight. But it's a great fight. I mean, honestly, with how boxing's been muddied recently, we need this. Like, boxing needs this because we've had so much nonsense in the last couple of months. Boxing needs a mega fight, 65,000 fans, and it needs to be a case of where we're going to discuss where it's like, I have no idea who's going to win. That's what boxing's about, right? I don't like the big fights when it's like, he's going to win, isn't it? Like we've got Canelo-Plant coming up, for example, and I love the fight, but I think 100 people you ask, 100 will say Canelo. I think if you poll 100 people for this one, I think AJ will be favourite, but only just.
Yeah, I think AJ. So I think rightfully goes into the fight as a favourite, right? Obviously, naturally the bigger guy, the natural heavyweight. I do feel like some people in their head are thinking that Oleksandr-Usyk's like a middleweight who's moved up. He's a big guy. Like for a cruiserweight, he's a big guy. I remember I met him. I think it was the first time I'd been like that close with him. I met him in New York actually before Joshua Ruiz won.
Okay.
And I saw him at the elevator. He was waiting for an elevator in the hotel. And I went and shook his hand, and like I remember Lennox Lewis's hands like engulfing my whole arm. But I also remember, but I remember that feeling as well of like shaking hands with Usyk and thinking, "Oh shit, he's big! Like he's a big guy, really big forearms, big neck, like
massive
calves,
back."
Yeah. So he's not this like small guy who's moving up. I think it's probably fair to say that he's a small heavyweight, but a heavyweight nonetheless.
Yeah, he's been a heavyweight now since the Bellew fight. Basically, he's been a heavyweight, right? He's moved up immediately after that, and he's now grown into it. This isn't a guy that just turned heavyweight where you kind of feel like, you know, is he going to struggle with the walk around weight? No, he's just a big guy now. You know, 20 years ago, he's a heavyweight. He's a normal size heavyweight. It's like now the guys are just giants, and that's why he maybe looks undersized. But he's still 6'3". He's still going to come in and around 16 and a bit stone. He's a big guy, but he's a big guy that can move. Like, I was worried if he does pack on the extra weight, will he still be as nimble as the fights I've done in the sort of the lead up to the fights to do a bit of research? Is he going to be as nimble as he was against a Gassiev who's physically a bit bigger but slower? I think he will be. I think AJ is going to need to dent this guy and dent him early, or it's going to be a very, very difficult 12 rounds. And my heart can't take it. My heart is about to take it. AJ going through 12 rounds of war with this kid.
Yeah, I agree with you, what you said there about making a dent on him earlier. I think he really needs to make him feel that power early on in the fight. Derek Chisora, for 3 or 4 rounds, give Usyk a good fight. After that, I felt like it was pretty much one-way traffic. I did feel like Usyk won the fight very, very clearly. And it's also worth pointing out that nobody fights like Derek Chisora in the heavyweight division, which is that come forward, smash mouth style and try and get in his face. But I do think Joshua needs to land something early to make Usyk feel it. And Usyk, you know, people talk about him like a bigger version of Lomachenko. They aren't the same in that style. He's not that elusive. He can be hit. You mentioned the Michael Hunter fight. You mentioned the Myris Bradis fight. He can be touched. He catches a lot of shots. Yeah. So a lot of shots on the arms and stuff. And when you're catching that against a cruiserweight, that's one thing. But even when you're against a heavyweight, even the shots you're catching on the arms, and the forearms, exactly, and it tires you out as well. If it goes into the second half of the fight,
that's when I won't be able to take it mentally.
That's the thing.
That's
I think
the scary thing for me.
For Anthony Joshua, and look, I think a lot of people look at the first Ruiz fight, and I think they probably play too much mind to that, in my opinion. I think Anthony Joshua showed in the rematch, admittedly against let's say a less than shapely. Well, he's a great shape. He was round. Andy Ruiz. He still boxed a very disciplined game plan, and there was a lot of pressure on Anthony Joshua going into that fight. But again, it's like what you've said about Tony Bellew, that kind of consistent pressure, that getting that front foot in between Anthony Joshua's feet and having a look and forcing him to work without really doing much.
This is it.
I'm interested to see what Joshua employs. You mentioned that being slimmer and looking lean.
Don't get me wrong, still a mountain. It's funny because when I say slimmer, obviously I remember when me and you were in Saudi Arabia and we saw him get on the scales for the Ruiz fight, and I think our mouths were ajar. Like, what?
Like, I was heavier than AJ.
Yeah.
He was like, I think he was like 16 10 or 11 or
but
something.
He actually looked even lighter, didn't he, than that? Like all the chest muscles and the shoulder, the delts didn't look sort of as prominent as we're used to. He's not that. He still is a big guy. Like when his arms were huge and his chest was still big, but I could see that he is still a lot lighter. I do feel with AJ there was a bit of a vanity thing with him, maybe wanting to be...
Takam fight.
Yeah. 18 stone 4, dude, or something ridiculous
he
like
was
that.
Massive.
Just too big. Like, what are we doing? And I feel like now he understands his body a lot more, and maybe he understands his flaws as well. AJ isn't Muhammad Ali or Lennox Lewis or Larry. You know, he knows what he is now. And I think that's important as well. Like, he knows the vulnerability is there. Accept it. It is what it is. You know, you're not going to build muscles on your chin. You just got to learn how to box and not get involved as much. And I think we saw that against Kubrat Pulev, and I think that's almost a performance that kind of goes under the radar as a clean, solid performance and not getting stuck in. And when he did get stuck in, he was out of the pocket very quickly. The difference is that Kubrat Pulev isn't going to be as smart and aggressive and as good, and you know he's not going to show him the looks that Usyk's going to give him. And again, this is the beauty of boxing. I want there to be that danger. I want to be fearful. Almost, we're going to talk about Wilder and Fury in a minute. I want it to be like that. And it should be like that. At the top table of boxing, it should be a case of anything can happen, you know. It should be that fear. And it shouldn't be a case of, AJ's going to win, Fury's going to win, let's get it on again. No. There should be that danger. And I think for AJ, there's a lot of danger. You mentioned Lomachenko. And it is a bit like Lomachenko, to the point where it's continued pressure, but it's not sort of just reckless pressure.
No.
You know what I mean? He's not taking shots. Like, you know, you get some of the Mexican fighters, sorry to tag them all under one, but they'll take a shot to land their shots. You know, a bit like Sam Egginton will take a shot to land his. Usyk is not taking shots on the way in. It's so smart. And I think AJ's jab is key to kind of keep him away, because once Usyk gets into the pocket, boy, he's good. He's very good.
You mentioned Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder, obviously October the 9th.
Yeah.
Who do you give? It's fair to say that Tyson Fury goes into that as a favourite. Who do you give more of a chance of springing the upset, Usyk or Wilder?
That's a good question. Wilder's intriguing, you know, like Rob, like all that nonsense he does, like swimming in the dirty sea or the dirty river.
It's like he was training in Blackpool.
Like, what?
Wasn't it?
I was thinking, is he just gone to the River Thames or something?
Yeah.
Is he teleported? He looks a lot bigger, Wilder, I think. He's upper body anyway again. I know he's got the small legs, but I think he's almost conditioned himself now to kind of carry the weight. I think I'd have to give Usyk a better chance. You know, I know it sounds crazy, but you know when you just can't picture someone losing? I know that sounds really dumb, but I can't picture Usyk losing for some reason. I almost feel like he's that good, whereas I've pictured AJ, obviously because of the Ruiz fight, but I've also seen AJ, obviously with the Dillian Whyte fight. I remember the Povetkin fight where he got caught, I think in the second or third round. And even that second AJ Ruiz fight, there was still that fear.
A vulnerability.
There was a big vulnerability, right? We were there right next to each other. And I was like, every time he got in close, I was like, oh, get out, get out.
Ade was like a proud parent.
Yeah.
In the ring.
I was like, that, please, what are you doing, AJ? So there's still that with AJ, and I've not been convinced that that's gone yet. I've not been convinced at all. I remember when Lennox Lewis lost, and everyone kept on saying, no, Lennox Lewis has that vulnerability. But when Lennox Lewis kind of put it together again, it was gone. I always thought, Lennox Lewis is going to win. I don't have that with AJ yet. So there is that fear. So I'd say I favour Usyk to do it more than I favour Wilder to do it.
The Pulev fight's an interesting fight because I think Pulev turned away in the third round, and that fight could have been over there and then. Yeah, and if you look on the record and you see Anthony Joshua TKO 3 Kubrat Pulev, then I don't think people necessarily come out of that fight and talk about Joshua's stuck between styles. He still looks hesitant. Remember Kubrat Pulev, as the fight went on in those middle rounds, he found the home for the right hand a few times.
Yep.
You don't see any of that if Joshua, and to be fair, the referee really should have stepped in that third round. You turn your back on an opponent in the corner, then the fight should really be over. So it's an interesting one. I agree with you. I think there's still an element of that vulnerability with Anthony Joshua, not necessarily chinny, but
no, it's not Amir Khan vulnerability.
It's a reaction when he gets hit by a shot as well. He kind of stiffens up, and it does take him a couple of rounds for him to kind of shed the cobweb, so to speak. So yeah, also there's something I actually thought about yesterday. Anthony Joshua's not fought in front of a crowd like he's gonna fight in front of a crowd on Saturday night since the first Ruiz fight, really. Ruiz 2 was, I think, like, to be fair, I don't know what it was like on TV. Obviously, we were there. Like, I felt like the atmosphere wasn't bad, but it wasn't
an AJ boxing.
Yeah, it's not going to be. It's not what you've had for the Povetkin fights, the Takam fight, the first Ruiz fight. Then obviously the Pulev fight was only 1,000 fans. Like. And this is a real test. So I don't think Oleksandr Usyk is the type of guy to care whether he fights in front of 1,000 people, 60,000 people.
Nothing.
So
we know, and not only that, but AJ's fans aren't. Like I was in Leeds for Lara Warrington. They're different fans.
Yeah.
AJ's fans aren't like that. You know what I mean? My sister's asking me for a ticket. That's the kind of people, you know what I mean? So you don't really get your hardcores, but then you get your mummy, dad, and the kid turn up. Whereas Warrington Leeds, it literally was hooligans. Like if AJ had 65,000 fans like that, maybe Usyk would feel intimidated.
Oleksandr Usyk went and put a hurting on Murat Gassiev in the middle of Russia.
Yeah, you're right.
With all of the tensions between Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. He's not scared of anything.
Walked into that bear pit atmosphere and produced a wonderful performance, but at cruiserweight. You know, Murat Gassiev, a world-class fighter, but a cruiserweight. Obviously now he's moved up to heavyweight. So there's a lot of things up in the air, I think, for this fight. I'm most interested to see what happens when Usyk hits Joshua.
It's weird. I'm more interested in the other way around.
Yeah,
I'm more interested.
kind of as
AJ,
I said that, I thought,
if
the other way.
AJ lands an uppercut, like those famed uppercuts now, where he literally puts everything into it like a forehammer. If he lands that on Usyk and Usyk still stands, then I'm more nervous than I should be. Honestly, if Usyk doesn't wobble when AJ hits him clean, then there will be a bit of fear. Because AJ can crack. He's not Wilder power, but AJ can crack and he's a good finisher. I think a very good finisher, in fact. So I'm more interested in that. Usyk's, and when Bellew said it, he said he's not a big puncher, but it's a cumulative effect of the punches. They just always seem to land on exactly the same spot, he said. He says he was getting jabbed, and it was almost like he had a dot on his head because Usyk landed the jab exactly the same spot. It's like, I'm not even in the same position. How have you landed that jab? So I don't know. If AJ can land clean and Usyk can take it, then ladies and gentlemen, we've got a fight. We've got a very, very good fight. But I just don't see how Usyk takes the power. No one really has taken the power. I mean, not clean anyway. I don't think AJ's not a one-punch knockout person, but you know you've been hit if he hits you.
Yeah, I mean, like you sort of see it from both angles, really. Is he a one-punch guy? I don't remember him knocking anybody out of one punch. I mean, Rafael Zambano Love, that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Like the only guy I've seen him clean out with one shot.
Yeah.
But obviously, that's a completely different level.
Yeah, that's a different.
But obviously, he can punch. He's a big puncher.
100%.
He's just maybe, he's a kind of an accumulative fighter as well.
Yeah.
But against a naturally smaller man in Oleksandr Usyk, maybe he does become a one-punch knockout artist. Who knows? A couple of quick questions on Anthony Joshua before we move on.
Yep.
Well, not necessarily on Anthony Joshua. Does the winner of Joshua-Usyk become the number one heavyweight in the world for you?
No.
Okay, why?
No, I think if Fury beats Wilder, I'd have to say Fury is still the number one heavyweight in the world. Just because in my weird rankings, I still have no idea where Usyk is as a heavyweight in my rankings. I think I don't think there are 5 heavyweights that can beat Usyk, but I don't know. I mean, his performances have been against Witherspoon and Chisora. I mean, could Hrgovic beat Usyk? Whereas in the heavyweight rankings, I think Wilder is the 3rd best heavyweight. Again, Hrgovic could do Wilder, but the rankings say he's the 3rd best heavyweight. So you'd have Fury, you'd have AJ, then I think you'd have Wilder. I don't know where Usyk is. So I think if number 1 beats number 3, then they stay as number 1. If number 2 and AJ beats number, what is Usyk? 6, 7? I have no idea. Then I don't think you can jump to number 1. I think Fury would still be the number 1 if he beats Wilder.
Okay, second question. If Anthony Joshua beats Oleksandr Usyk, is he in your pound-for-pound top 10?
Some good questions, Rob.
I've been waiting for you to come back just so I could ask you.
My friend. Just outside it, I think.
Just outside it. How come? Oleksandr Usyk, in a lot of people's opinion, mine included, is a pound-for-pound at least top 10, if not top 5, 6.
Pound-for-pound top 10 because of what he done as a cruiserweight. How long does that last in our discussions? Like he's in there because he cleaned up his cruiser. Again, his last fight at cruiser was Tony Bellew, which was November 2019 or was it 2018? So does that still count then? I mean, does a Witherspoon and a Chisora win? No disrespect, I love Chisora, but he's got double-digit defeats, and Witherspoon's Witherspoon. Does that keep you in the pound for pound? Do you know what I mean? Like,
for me, it does. I mean, purely because the manner in which he beat a very, very good cruiserweight division, that he toppled a cruiserweight division.
Every fight.
Also, how are we judging pound for pound? I mean, like, he beat Derek Chisora pretty much better than most people apart from David Hay. Obviously, I know Dillian Whyte knocked out Derek Chisora, but he was behind on the cards, even with 2 points off.
He was.
Argument about the first fight, whether that could have gone either way. David Hay cleaned Chisora out in 5 rounds, so that was a very impressive win. Other than that, I can't think of anybody who kind of handled Derek Chisora as well as Usyk, and by definition of pound for pound, or certainly one of the measuring sticks of pound for pound, if everybody was the same size, or whatever you want to call it.
Then
Usyk beat Derek Chisora. Derek Chisora's 40 pounds heavier than him. So, he's unified a cruiserweight division and then gone up and beaten a legit big heavyweight guy and beat him well. So, for me, he is still very much a pound for pound level guy. I probably agree with you. I think for Joshua, Joshua would probably slot in at around, 10, 11. Like I could make my peace with him at number 10 maybe. But having said that, he would have all the physical advantages. When you're looking at pound for pound, he's beating a guy who's naturally going to be quite a lot smaller than him in the ring on the night. Admittedly, we keep talking about him being a small heavyweight. Joshua is one of the big heavyweights. Yeah. He's one of the kind of the giants who we were talking about. So, yeah, for me, I think Usyk is still very much a pound for pound level fighter, 100% in my opinion.
He's a phenomenal fighter. It's funny you just mentioned that, because what I don't want to happen, and such as boxing fans are, I don't want AJ, if he does win, not to get the credit.
100%.
Because I don't want people to say, yeah, but he's a smaller guy.
No.
You know, he needs to get all the flowers and the plaudits he deserves, because he is taking on a guy in Usyk who is a puzzle. Honestly, he's a puzzle. You watch his fights, even the ones against the Bradis and the Hunter, where these guys obviously caused him problems. The things he's doing, it's very, very elite level boxing. I mean, you go and look at his amateur record. That alone tells you how good a boxer he is. And since he's been with the Loma team, he's just got even better. He's got a lot better. So if AJ does win, he deserves his credit. And although I've said I don't think he cracks the top 10, that's just because there are 10 other great fighters in that top 10.
Yeah, it's difficult when you're ranking heavyweight.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Him being around 11, 12, 13 is no discredit. Like, honestly, it's no discredit. And I think he does need to start getting some plaudits, because I still think people will say, oh, he's only fighting the kind of the B guys, because, you know, what we like in boxing, there's only 2 A guys in Wilder and Fury. Everyone else is rubbish. He's fighting these guys and he's doing well. And I think Usyk, if he does beat him, will probably be the best name on the record when we look back, because we can dissect and say, oh, Klitschko, and we can say the things that we said 41, 18 months out of the ring. There is no excuse with Usyk. He's fresh, he's ready to go. There is no damage. It'll be a solid win if AJ beats him.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I'm, you know, probably one of the people who gives Oleksandr Usyk more of a chance than, let's say, your average fan, your average.
What kind of percentage?
Fan.
You know, like percentage.
I'd probably say Joshua's a 60-40 favourite. I do think it. I do think it's that close. I really do. I think stylistically, Oleksandr Usyk is not a good fight for Anthony Joshua.
What a fight!
He's got good feet. He's got good hand defenses, good head movement, like moving in and out of range. He's got a good engine. We've obviously seen Anthony Joshua tire late in some fights.
Something we've not spoken about. You're right. Usyk 12 rounds. This guy can go 12 rounds. Like he's
at
an old
pace
school 15
as well.
Rounder. Yeah, he'll go 15 rounds. Yeah.
So I would say that being such a threat, and like you're going to get boxing fans anyway who are going to say, oh, Usyk's going to beat Anthony Joshua and then Joshua wins. Oh, well, Usyk was just small. No, I agree with you. If Anthony Joshua wins, provided it's not a controversial decision or anything like that, then he deserves all the plaudits for beating somebody like Oleksandr Usyk. Oleksandr Usyk is a world-class fighter, an elite-level fighter.
Elite level.
So I do think Anthony Joshua, if he does emerge victorious, does deserve a lot of credit in that fight.
You know when I said, like, I don't know where Usyk is as a heavyweight, are you, by definition of all what you just said there, is he like the 4th best or the 3rd best? Or where is
I don't know. I don't know how many heavyweights I'd pick to beat him. Put it that way.
That's it, right?
Put it that way. I don't know how many heavyweights I'd pick to beat him.
Yeah.
Difficult. I think Fury's a bad fight for Usyk.
Yeah, that's the
because he's big, he's long, and he can control the distance. Yeah,
it's a big problem.
So I think style-wise, that's not a great fight for Usyk. Deontay Wilder, you'd fancy probably him landing maybe one shot at some point, you know, against a naturally smaller guy like that.
Anyone else, you're kind of like Joe Joyce. It's an interesting one.
Yeah.
I don't know what Hrgovic is really. I mean, look, he's clearly a very good fighter, but we need to see.
Not had the fights. He fought
Radoncic.
Radonjic.
Yeah, thank you.
Radonjic. Bounced him around the 2nd round.
Yeah, should have been off. What was that?
I would have won £1,000 if the referee would have stopped that fight in the 2nd round. 4 knockdowns and you let him carry on. The referee wanted pain. He wanted pain for Radonjic.
He looked ringside like, we have what left? 20 minutes on the show. He's got to get up.
Referee had 3 to 4 in the act. Yeah. So that was terrible for me. Anyway, moving on. We've spoken about Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. Yeah. It's mad. I said this to Mike Costello. Shout out Mike Costello. That it seems like now the fight is perceived to be at least closer than it would have been if this fight would have happened a year ago or July 2020 when they were talking about it. Do you think that's because of the inactivity of Fury? Do you think these kind of crazy like mind games that I guess you could call them mind games that Deontay Wilder's been playing and the training videos and all of that stuff, is that kind of distorting the perception on it? What do you think that is? Because it does feel like a lot more people are giving Wilder a lot more of a chance than potentially they should be, considering how one-sided the second fight was and large parts of the first fight.
Yeah, maybe. I think it's all down to Fury in this one. I think I'm not quite sure if people feel like Fury's been training here, all the sparring rumors that he's been hurt in sparring and blah, blah, blah. I feel like people don't think Fury's mentally 100% on it. Maybe like he was going into the second fight where he felt like, okay, Fury's now at his A game. Look, personally, I feel like if Fury's on his A game, mentally, physically, best heavyweight on the planet, and that could be by some reach as well. I think he could play around with some of the heavyweights. I don't know if he is on that. Like, even when reports of the second fight being off because of COVID, and you're seeing him around Miami, and you're seeing him out with Broner, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, are we serious now? Are we not? Issues with his dad, and his dad saying, come home, and are they talking, are they not talking? So I think it's more down to Fury. I don't think, unless people have been impressed by Wilder's body punch work with Malik Scott, I don't know if that's tipped in his favor.
I do think some of the stuff that we've seen looks good. I do think some other stuff that we've seen,
and I don't
maybe
even
not
think
great,
he's showing us everything, if I'm honest with you. I think sometimes he's playing the game as well.
Yeah.
Look, he is a lot confident, and the way in which he talks sometimes, it makes you a believer. Because he talks and it's aggressive and he looks mean and he's a big, strong guy. And, you know, you watch clips of his knockouts and he literally is putting people to sleep where their legs are bending backwards. And I do think he has that where everyone's like, hey, all he needs to do is land one for 12 rounds. And it's Wilder. You just don't, you honestly don't know. And then he's got all the accusations and all the cheats, supposedly, that Tyson Fury did, which I firmly believe he didn't. It's definitely tip it in the favour of, it's still heavily favoured to Fury, but it's definitely tipped it a bit to the point where you think Wilder's got a chance here, and more than just a chance. Like you said, Usyk AJ was 60-40. I would say this is more 70-30 Fury, but 30 still big.
Yeah.
What are you, 20, 80,
I think
20?
maybe around there. I think with Tyson Fury, like, he is an enigma.
Yeah.
You know, but one thing that you have to say about him is in his biggest fights, he's shown up.
All the time.
Vladimir Klitschko away from home, he showed up. Derek Chisora, both fights showed up.
I think people forget the second Chisora beat him up.
That was something that I forgot that when we were talking about Derek Chisora. Yeah, well, Usyk's done a better job. Tyson Fury beat him left-handed
Easily.
So,
and I was in the Chisora camp for that fight, just doing some stuff behind the scenes, and I thought he's in great shape.
Yeah.
I actually saw him spar Daniel Dubois, and I don't really want to say what happened in the sparring, but I was like, oh, he's good to go. Got bashed up.
Yeah, so I think, like, I do favour Fury. I do favour Fury, but Wilder can punch, and when you can punch like he can, and if Fury does take his eye off the ball, but I have to admit, I can't really see that. I mean, after the Wallin fight went out in Vegas in September, I think it was a year ago, yesterday or the day before, he obviously had that terrible cut, bad performance. Ben Davison, people forget that Ben Davison left the camp about 8 weeks before the Wilder rematch, and a lot of people were going into that rematch going, oh, Sugar Hill, and he's going to be boxing on the front foot, and look how heavy he is. Like, I remember being in Vegas on the day of the weigh-in, and everybody hearing like 19.6 or whatever he was, like 19.5 stone. Everyone was like, this guy's going to get smashed. Like, he needs to be light. He needs to be moving away from Wilder. So
every hard fight he's been in, I've gone against him.
Same.
Vladimir Klitschko is going to destroy. Watch. And I remember telling people, thinking I'm a hardcore, but watch. And then what he did, look, it's a boring fight. I would never watch it again. But then the first Wilder fight, which I thought he won, the way in which he got up, and then the second one, I was like, what? And it's not like Fury's never fought aggressive. Like we mentioned the Chisora fight there. He fought Chisora aggressive, and he can fight on the front foot, but you didn't expect him to do that against him, Wilder. So yeah, I would never bet against Fury. And that's why when people come at me, it's funny because when I went to do the AJ interview, a lot of people in the comments are like, did you tell him that you said Fury's going to beat him? And I'm like, I'm an AJ fan. A, he didn't ask me. And B, no. But I've got to be honest. I think Fury's just that good. It's not like I dislike AJ. I just think Fury, when he's on his game, is just so good. It's a mental warfare as well with him. It's not just about the fight. It's all the build-up, everything. And then it's his dad and it's his uncle, his brother. Everyone brings involved.
That kind of like mystique around him. There's that aura.
It's frightening. So yeah, for me, Fury gets it done again. It's going to be a great fight.
I picked Chisora to beat him.
Really?
The first fight.
Oh, the first one.
So
title.
Yeah, Chisora was unbeaten at the time.
Yeah.
So I picked Chisora to win the first fight.
Yeah.
I actually thought he would give Vlad problems, but I thought Vlad would win.
Yeah.
I picked Wilder in the first fight, and I picked Wilder in the rematch. So what do I know, really? You should turn this off.
Yeah.
Please don't stay. But anyway, so I'm kind of in the same camp as you, that it's difficult for me to pick against him. And I do feel that there is a good chance that on October the 10th, everybody looks back and goes, well, obviously that was going to happen. Look at what happened in a rematch. So
what I do hope, and look, because I think you get a lot of Fury fans, and I'm one of them, but not as hardcore as some Fury fans. Fury versus Ali back in the day. Fury 6'9". And I'm like, look, forget that. That's barbershop talk. But what he can do is start to really bolster that CV of his, right? Because it is just Klitschko and Wilder. No disrespect to Chisora, but in terms of wins that we're going to look back in 20 years to come, it's only Klitschko and Wilder right now. He said this hit list of Dillian, Whyte, then AJ twice. I'm like, do it. He's clearly got all the skills in which to do this. So that when we are old people, slippers. Well, no sliders today. What's going on?
The new me.
What's happening? Jeez. But when we do look back, we can say, look at his CV though. His catalogue is thick, and right now, for as good as he is, the catalogue needs to be deeper. It needs to be. I'm not having it. You can't go Wilder, Tom Schwartz for me. You can't do that. Otto Wallin we give credit for now, but you can't go.
Do you remember when I came on your show and I told you that Otto Wallin wasn't going to be a walkover for Tyson Fury?
You did say that.
And everybody killed me in the comments section on Boxing Talk with Ade.
Yeah. What does Rob know? Doesn't watch boxing.
But yeah, we'll talk about Otto Wallin versus Dillian Whyte coming up soon. What next for Tyson Fury if he comes past Deontay Wilder?
Dillian Whyte.
Yeah?
Dillian Whyte. I still think negotiations for AJ Fury, if AJ gets past Usyk, because I'm more confident of Fury doing the job, it's still going to be difficult. It's just how it is. It's going to be long, isn't it? So, in the meantime, if he can get past and he thinks it's going to be easy work against Wilder, like he says, and he wants one more knock before the year, give Dillian Whyte his shot. Just so we can stop the conversation about Dillian Whyte not getting a shot. Give Dillian Whyte his shot in December or January. That'll be a massive fight in the UK. I don't know. Obviously, there are issues around Tyson maybe fighting in the UK, but just Dillian Whyte, have that. I wouldn't mind Dillian Whyte having a crack. And I'd talk about the build-up with Fury and what he brings. Imagine the build-up because of what Whyte brings. It'd be fantastic, and it'll be a big, big event in the UK, a massive event, and then we'll see. But I wouldn't mind it being Dillian Whyte.
The one thing that I have to say about Tyson Fury is that I can't really see him fighting in the UK unless it's Joshua. Because he's making that US pay-per-view money. Yeah. He's now a really well-known fighter in America. That's where all the money is. That's where the big, big, big fights happen. Yeah. So if you're Tyson Fury, are you going to... Yes, you can make good money fighting Dillian Whyte on box office in the UK. I would have potentially liked to have seen Dillian Whyte maybe take a fight in America. Maybe
100%. That was the plan.
Get out there and box somebody in America who's known.
Charles Martin was perfect.
Anybody really, any American, go out there, talk shit all week in the fight week, get some headlines. Yeah. Deliver a KO win on the weekends, and then try and build a little bit of momentum in America, and then maybe you could have got Fury versus Whyte, but we may well see that over here anyway. Okay, so let's say Fury beats Deontay Wilder for argument's sake. He then goes and boxes Dillian Whyte. Where does Anthony Joshua go? Provided, of course, he gets past Oleksandr-Usyk. Who does he fight next?
It's difficult, right?
Any mandatories? No, because there's no IBF mandatory at the minute.
No, it's difficult for AJ because it's a spectacle as well, isn't it? It's selling 70, 80, 90,000 tickets, so you can't just chuck anyone in with him because people just shouldn't and wouldn't accept it. I don't know. There has been the talk of Joe Joyce. Like, I spoke to Sam Jones and he was like, he wants Joseph Parker or Luis Ortiz. I'd watch it. It's not a fight that really intrigues me. I'll tell you, it's funny. I wouldn't mind seeing Ruiz free, I would. Well, it's one apiece. There should be a trilogy. It's one apiece.
Maybe not for me next.
No,
for me next. I don't know. I'd like to see Ruiz kind of the Areola fight. I think he
looks awful.
I think he grew into the fight, but he was dropped and hurt a couple of times early in the fight.
Areola was a lot better than I expected in that fight. I will say that. Yeah, for someone that had been out there, for someone that is literally what's less than a part-time boxer. He's not even a part-time boxer anymore.
He had that great fight with Adam Kalnacki, where they broke all kinds of punch stat records and all sorts of other stats were through the roof for both of them. So he was obviously lined up to potentially fight Dillian Whyte. Maybe that could have been a good idea to fight Areola in America. But obviously he's landed on Otto Wallin. I don't know.
problem
Yeah,
is there's a
I would
lot
like.
of-
I would like to eventually see that fight. I would like to eventually see Joshua versus Ruiz, and you could probably the first fight in America. The second fight was obviously in Saudi.
Third
They could
fight
do the
over
third
here.
fight in the UK.
It will do,
and that would sell.
It would. You got Eddie Hearn behind it and AJ. You'll sell the fight. I mean, the problem for AJ, there's a lot of fights that are big risk, little reward. You think of like Hrgovic, that's big risk, little reward. You don't get much plaudits from the casual fans for beating. Who is this Hrgovic? Oh, he's rubbish. Hasn't beat anyone. You don't get. You know what I mean? You don't get much plaudits from that. So it's risky. But I don't know. There is Ruiz. There's Hrgovic. I
I
mean,
wouldn't mind the Joe Joyce fight.
yeah.
I wouldn't mind that because if you think about like Joshua's going to box Usyk and then Joyce versus let's say Luis Ortiz, or I think he could punch holes in Luis Ortiz. I really
right
do.
now, yeah,
At this stage of Ortiz's career, Ortiz was a great fighter like a few years ago, but I feel like
Wilder performance. Yeah.
just feel like he's lost that sting now in his shots.
What happens when you're 50?
But I do think Joyce looks good in that fight.
Takes far too many shots for me. I'm not with this juggernaut nonsense. Like, I get it. I mean, yes, you can take punches, but the amount of punches that he takes, it's silly now. It's silly. I mean, he's an Olympic silver medalist, long amateur career, Joe Joyce. I mean, start to show a bit of those amateur boxing skills. Like, you don't have to take the shots he takes all the time. I mean, Carlos Takam, I was ringside for that fight, hit him a lot, like too much. And I was like, how is he taking these shots? And obviously people then, you sort of pride yourself on doing it. I remember Carl Froch was like that. You granite chin, and then eventually you get put down by Jermaine Taylor and then put down hard by George Groves. It doesn't last. It doesn't last. So fingers crossed he starts to kind of move. He won't. What is he, 35 now? That's it. It is what it is.
Having said that, he in the I think it comes down to with somebody like Joe Joyce. I think it's the risk or the threat of whatever's in front of him. Carlos Takam is a strong guy, but he's never really been noted as a big puncher throughout his career.
Yeah.
The Dubois fight, Joyce was brilliant with a left hand jab, move out to the right every time, and worked brilliantly, varying the jab to the head and body. He beat Daniel Dubois really with one hand. Beat Dubois with that lead left hand.
I remember GGG said that about Kell Brook. Like, obviously everyone's getting excited when Kell started to land. He's like, felt the punches and they were nothing. And so I was able to just eat those punches like Pac-Man. So maybe.
Yeah, so I think Joyce, relative to the threat that's in front of him, do I think he would box Deontay Wilder the same way that he boxed Carlos Takam? Probably not. No, I think he would be a lot more defensively astute or defensively aware.
You said Wilder then. It just upsets me to my bones here, like that we never are going to get to see. I don't think we're going to get to see it. AJ Wilder.
Yeah, no.
That would have been a humongous fight.
Do you think if Wilder loses to Fury, that'll be it?
Depends how.
Yeah.
If it's close, I still think there's the Ruiz fight in America. It's a Black African versus Mexican. There's still that sell in America. If he gets beat the way he did again, then all those excuses are out the window. He'll probably still use excuses, but they're out the window, and I think he might call it quits. Remember, he's almost a fighter that looks like Wilder looks like he's 25. What is he? He's going to be 36, I think. He's an old man. He's not a young spring chicken. He's had a lot of fights. So he might call it a day. He's made some really good paydays, hasn't he, recently? So he might, but I think there's still... The problem is this is the worst time to retire as a heavyweight. There's so much money. I mean, again, look at Chisora, double-digit losses, and he's going to have a big fight against Parker, and he's going to get paid, might even get paid 7 figures. So this is the worst time. Hence why the likes of Dave Allen might want to come back, just because there's money out there now. Dave Allen versus maybe a Babbage will make him good money. So, yeah, you don't retire now, do you? Unless the sport retires you, you don't retire now.
I think for the flip side of that, if Deontay Wilder wins, then Deontay Wilder versus Andy Ruiz becomes a massive fight.
Massive, dude. For a world title.
You could do that Cinco de Mayo 2022.
Huge.
Deontay Wilder versus Andy Ruiz. That'd be a massive fight.
That is huge. You know, I think we haven't, in America, touched that million pay-per-view mark for a while.
Canelo Golovkin too.
Yeah.
Unless you believe some of the Triller pay-per-view numbers, which I don't.
Which I don't at all. That one would be one that gets very close to a million pay-per-view.
Yeah, it would be a big fight. Yeah, big heavyweight fight in-house at PBC as well. Be good.
Massive. Massive. Yeah, and that's fine. That's interesting you say that, because I would have thought that they'll try and go Wilder AJ again. Obviously, AJ being a free agent after this next fight with Sky, he could do whatever he wants, but I don't think he will. Because one thing I said, sorry to go back to that AJ interview, and I was like, you know, why are you still doing this? I asked him. You made a lot of money. You know, you've done this, you've done that. And he said, undisputed. That's it, undisputed. I want the undisputed fight. So look, he might go in search of Wilder if Wilder wins. He might.
Well, depending on who you believe, I mean, you can believe whatever you want or disbelieve whatever you want. He apparently wanted that fight, but obviously you listen to other people, and he didn't want the fight. So it depends on who you listen to. But
boxing's full of crap, isn't it?
Yeah. Speaking about Deontay Wilder, you mentioned earlier on, we're speaking a lot about physiques. Putting on that.
Breathe in. I just breathed in. Yeah.
Putting on that extra muscle. I felt like he was heavy in the last fight. So he was 12 pounds heavier than the Luis Ortiz rematch, which was in November. I felt that was a bit of a hindrance to him. Obviously, Fury came in heavier as well. And Wilder, what I don't really want to see from Wilder is him putting on extra muscle because he wants to be stronger in the clinch and losing that explosiveness, that fast twitch that he's ironed guys out at 215, 216 pounds in the past. I don't think he's ever going to be able to hold his own with Fury in the clinch. Fury's always going to lean all over him. I'd like to see Wilder back down at sort of 215, 220 as opposed to 230 or even heavier potentially for this fight. And keeping that speed, like he covers distance so quickly. Yeah. And against Tyson Fury, with the reach that Fury's got, being a 6'9" guy, you're gonna need to cover that ground quickly. If you remember in the rematch, I mean, the rematch was a one-sided fight, but he did land 2 right hands. He landed a right hand in the first round, and he landed another right hand in the second round. And Fury was able to kind of double step back and take the sting out of it. And you just kind of wonder if Wilder was maybe 10 pounds lighter on his feet and maybe that explosiveness and getting to the target quicker, because he does cover ground so quickly. I mean, I watched a brilliant breakdown with Andre Ward. Andre Ward did a breakdown of how quickly he covers distance. Yeah. I don't want to see him lose that. Like, I feel like that's going to be his best chance to win the fight by coming in. I don't say come in light, like 205 or 210 or whatever, but I don't want to see him at 235, 240. I felt like he was too heavy in the last fight.
Look, clearly was too heavy. I guess the only thing with this is that last fight was, February 2020. Now, if he's carried that extra weight and he's not got back down to what we like him, 210, 212, and he's now just walking around, and he has been walking around for a year and a half at 230, he's now used to it. He should be used to that extra weight now. So he might be able to, it might be a bit more comfortable in his legs, and he might still be able to kind of be as fast as he wants to be. It must be so mentally difficult, though, because you look at Wilder and everyone looks at him, he's the same height as Fury, but he's a lot lighter than Tyson Fury, and he definitely got bullied in the clinch. Like Tyson Fury was able to kind of just push him onto the ropes and almost just do what he wanted.
The maul him.
Yeah, maul him, and that must be like, I want to kind of, I want to be able to kind of push back a little bit. So, look, unless he comes in at 250, he's not going to be able to push back at Tyson Fury. So
he still won't be able to.
No,
because that's not his style. Like, and Fury's a natural big
and
big
Fury
man.
likes to maul like that and bully. I mean, he did that. I remember when he done that to Steve Cunningham.
Yeah.
He just embarrassed him, didn't it? It was awful to watch.
We flew. It was actually the 2 days before the first lockdown. Me and Ryan flew out to Dublin to go and see Andy Lee, and Andy Lee said that like Fury got a little bit too involved in the mauling, but because he could see that it was working, and he was draining Wilder in the clinches and was able to bully him and push him around. If you're Wilder, try and avoid the clinch, try and avoid getting backed up at all, because I fail to believe, like Malik Scott, I feel like a lot of people are underestimating his boxing knowledge.
It's crazy.
If you ever speak to Malik Scott, have you ever spoken to him?
I have.
He's a really intelligent boxing mind. He knows.
Sorry to interrupt. There's no one in heavyweight boxing that has been in more sparring camps than Malik Scott. Like literally every single sparring camp. Oh, there's Malik Scott in the background. So he's been around like every single sparring partner. He did. And there was a time, obviously, before the Chisora lost, where he was unbeaten for ages. But everyone was like, this is kind of weird. Kind of, is he taking the sport seriously? And I never thought he really did, especially when he got beat by Wilder. I was like, what's he doing? But as a boxing guy, he's a brilliant mind. It's just that obviously when he posts photos of himself with cigars in the bath with a couple of girls, everyone's like, what's this guy doing?
I think like a lot of people are misconstruing the fact that he knows Deontay Wilder and they're friends and what have you. He's also friends with Joseph Parker. He's also friends with, he's shared camps with Dillian Whyte, Klitschko, Tyson Fury.
Of course, Dillian AJ fight as well.
So I think a lot of people I feel are unfairly labelling him a yes man. I feel like if you speak to Malik Scott and he breaks stuff down brilliantly, obviously talking and putting into practice are two completely different things, of course. But he is such a knowledgeable guy, and I do feel like he may be good for... I don't think... You mentioned Wilder's 35, 36. Yep. He's not going to completely remodel his entire style. Yeah. Even in 18 months, it's just not going to happen. And even if he does, as soon as I feel like once Fury lands on him, he's going to revert to type. Like everybody, and naturally, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, as Mike Tyson once put it. So, yeah, I am really interested. And I do feel like I'm more interested now than I would have been last July. I've spoken a lot about Wilder. I feel like the inactivity will be more of a detriment to Tyson Fury than Deontay Wilder. Fury spoke really openly about making Vegas his home before he had that rematch with Wilder. He boxed Tom Schwartz in June. He boxed Otto Wallin in September, and then he had Wilder in February. He had 3 fights in Vegas in a row. He was active. You know, he spoke openly about how much better he felt by being active. Obviously, he stays in the gym now to help him with his mental health and and keep him on the straight and narrow, so to speak. But not having that in-ring experience, that in-ring activity, I feel is more of a detriment to Fury, who's more of a rhythm fighter, more of a reflex fighter, than it is to Wilder, who's looking to line you up and land that one big shot to get you out of there. Do you agree?
Agreed, 100%. Like, obviously, there was the talks of the Ade Oladipo fight, which would have been good, right? I mean, that's a good European level fighter. It's rude to say it will be a tick of a fight because I think it's a bit more than that. But just aside from the rhythm, just mentally, fighters like Fury, and maybe I'd put Billy Joe Saunders in that as well. I feel like they need to be in the ring. They need to have a fight to prepare for. And there was that time when Fury was busy, not just with the boxing, but with the WWE, looked slim, looked like his mind was in the right place. And as I said at the top, a mentally focused Fury, for me, is the best heavyweight by some distance. And I fear that he's not as mentally focused as he should be. Don't get me wrong, he can switch it on. And look, we're not going to doubt him, right? Klitschko, Wilder twice, we can't doubt him, but he needs to be in the ring fighting. He's not going to take the sparring sessions as maybe as serious as he should.
All of this stuff about him getting knocked out by Jared Anderson doesn't mean anything.
It means nothing.
He's a heavyweight. Lots of heavyweights get hurt in the gym.
Why do people find that so... Oh my God, he got beaten. I'm like, what are you... So?
Yeah, lots of fighters get hurt in sparring.
You never know where your sparring partner is in his preparation as to... Fury could literally have just got off the couch against someone that's 2 weeks out to a fight. Do you know what I mean? Or 3 weeks out. You never know where they are. So, look, it definitely...
It's never a good thing to get knocked out or allegedly knocked out.
Yeah,
or
whatever, knocked down or
even
even cracked a couple of times. But these are guys that are 20 stone hitting each other, yes, with 12 or 14-ounce gloves, but these are still big guys cracking each other. It's going to happen. 100% it's going to happen. But yeah, look, Fury's the kind of person, and as much as we say he's a rhythm fighter, this guy literally came off the couch and he was drinking beers and openly taking cocaine, and he fought a couple of sparring guys, as far as I'm concerned, in Sefat Safiri and Pianetta, and I think beat Wilder the first time round. Literally, what was he, 30 stone? Was able to lose a few stone and then get in the ring.
10 stone.
Yeah, so he's just different. He's just I was watching his little piece with Gary Neville with the walking on Morecambe Beach. He's so confident, it's unbelievable. And I don't know where that comes from. I don't know if it's a bit delusional, but it works. And it works for him. And I just, I can't see anything, regardless of the inactivity, I can't see anything but a Fury win here.
So we've gone from 70-30 to 100%.
90-10.
90-10.
Yeah, that 10 is
I'm still saying 80-20. I think there's enough variables, and Wilder hits hard enough to give him a 1 in 5 chance.
Yeah, okay.
So,
okay, I see what you're doing.
Moving on, of course, this
good
week.
undercard, by the way. FA Jagba.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Frank Sanchez.
We were going to come on. We were going to
come
come on to undercard shortly because we've not spoken about.
Sorry to kind of run your podcast.
That's all right. See, he's big time now.
Yeah.
And he calls a shot. Yeah. FA Jagba returns to action.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good little undercard. Why don't you talk us through it, Ade?
No, you know what it is? I felt sorry for the guys first time round. Obviously, look, none of these guys fought because once Fury Wilder got canned, all of it got canned. And I was like, well, to be fair, FA Jagba, Frank Sanchez is a big enough Saturday night fight card. It doesn't have to be pay-per-view. It's a great fight. I mean, you're looking for those guys to kind of break through that top 15. Whoever wins out of that, obviously me being Nigerian, I'm kind of high on FA Jagba, but I know he's got problems there. Like, you know, he's vulnerable, put it that way. And Frank Sanchez, we don't know. Is he another Luis Ortiz? Is he 30 going on 50? I have no idea. And then you got the rematch between Kalnaki and Hellenius, right? Kalnaki, I know, which
was a big shock first time.
Yeah, and I think they were talking about Kalnaki maybe being lined up to fight Ruiz, and then Hellenius comes around and puts a beating on him.
Yeah,
you know. So I like it. Julian Williams is on the undercard as well. He hasn't fought for a while, so decent undercard. But that's one of the best undercards I've seen in a long time. You know, a lot of people say, I want my value for money. Decent value for money there. Heavyweights bring value for money.
when you consider that the main event is such a big fight as well, you know,
This is it, dude.
a lot of these main events get kind of very, very sparse undercards.
Very sparse.
We'll talk about the Joshua undercard first. We were going to talk about the other heavyweight fights. To talk about the Joshua undercard. Callum Smith returns.
He does.
At 175 pounds. Boxes Lenin Castillo. Obviously, the last time we saw him in the ring was against Canelo Alvarez in a very one-sided loss.
Dude.
Expecting
the third arm.
Yeah. Expecting him to make any noise at 175 pounds.
I don't know. Obviously, this is his first fight with Buddy McGirt as well, and I've always said it takes maybe 2 or 3 camps, fight camps with a trainer to get it in, to really understand what the trainer wants from you. I think he's an intelligent boxer. I've always thought every time he speaks, he's an intelligent, calm person. But then when you got all those advantages at 168, he's the biggest 168 we've ever seen in our lives. At 175, he's kind of the same size as people. He's got that size advantage, but those advantages that he had at 168, a lot of them just evaporate at 175. What I will say, though, is that we've got a thriving 175-pound division over here. I don't know if he's going to jump into this water over here or go international, so I'm expecting him to do the latter. But I would love for him to be in that mix with Callum Johnson, Boatsi, the winner, if it ever happens, of Yard, Arthur. I think he can be in that mix. Can he go to the world level and beat the likes of Marcus Brown or Beterbiev or a Joe Smith? Not quite sure.
I think he can
cause some problems.
Being a former world champion, obviously won the World Boxing Super Series.
Yeah.
I think he's above Callum Johnson, Joshua Boatsi, those types of guys.
You think he's above Boatsi as a light heavy?
As a former world champion, you have to give him in my opinion, a certain level of respect.
Did you see how I just went like that when he said that? Like, here we go.
A certain level of respect for him being a world champion. He's lost one fight to Canelo Alvarez. Obviously, the John Ryder fight was very, very controversial.
Yeah.
Had John Ryder winning that fight, but still, Callum Smith has...
Give him his respect.
Yeah. And to go up to 175 pounds, he's going to be looking for the big fights. He's in the stage of his career where, you know, he made a lot of money in the World Boxing Super Series. He would have been paid handsomely for the Canelo Alvarez fight.
I mean, Callum Smith, 29,
I don't know.
30?
No, I think he's 31.
Okay.
31.
Well,
don't quote me on that. Sorry, Callum, if you're any younger. And you're welcome.
Not saying you look 31.
And you're welcome if you're older. But yeah, I think he's going to be looking to get a world title. I mean, I think Boatsi is nicely placed now after the win against Ricard Bolotniks.
Yep.
Whether we see Joshua Boatsi versus Dimitri Bivol before we see Callum Smith versus Dimitri Bivol, and then we could see Callum Smith versus Joshua Boatsi for a world title. I could see that happening. I can't see any real point in in Callum Smith looking to box Joshua Boatsi if there's no world title at stake.
Okay.
A Gilberto Ramirez, somebody like that. Marcus Brown, I think he blows hot and cold. He's vulnerable as well.
Yeah.
Where else have we got in around the mix? Joe Smith, I think, is there to be beat. I thought he lost his last fight.
He did.
I thought Vlasov beat him. He's now fighting Danny Jacobs,
Yeah.
which is a really weird step. Danny Jacobs obviously not long moved up to 168, and now he's
Rosado.
No, that was a terrible fight.
Oh, dude,
terrible.
Dude.
One of the worst.
I never
fights
thought
I've
that
ever
would
seen.
be that. I never thought Rosado Jacobs. Sorry to kind of go a different direction. I never thought that would be a bad fight. But look, Callum Smith. You know what the thing is about Callum Smith, and what you just did there is the best position for any boxer to be in. So many options.
Yeah.
I mean, the worst thing to be, right, is that great guy and is like, who am I going to fight, right? Now there's so many options for him. And with the Buddy McGirt thing, it kind of weirdly opens that American market as well, because Buddy will sell the fights because Buddy's a good talker as well. So he's got options. But I want to see what he looks like with Buddy. I don't know what Buddy can do. I remember watching that Canelo fight back. He tried everything. You know, there's some people like, he didn't even try. I'm like, he did. Canelo was just a monster that day. He tried everything, and Canelo was just far too good. But sometimes I almost feel like for a guy, he's big, he smothers his work a bit. So hopefully...
Doesn't fight tall. Doesn't fight tall and doesn't fight long. I think that's what we're going to see from Buddy McGirt. Buddy McGirt, one of the first things that he kind of reinvented Otto Gatti to a degree as well, got him back on his boxing. What he did with Sergei Kovalev, I thought was very, very good as well. Getting him back on that jab, getting him boxing, beautifully behind his lead left hand. I feel like we'll see him have Callum Smith boxing behind a jab a little bit more, not necessarily fighting small and staying in the pocket.
Yeah.
Callum's obviously got that wonderful catch and counter left hook, which is still always going to be there. Doesn't mean you always need to be in line for that. I'm looking forward to, should I say, seeing him at 175. I do feel like cutting to 168 started to affect him. I felt like we saw that in the Ryder fight.
It has to. There's no two ways of, you've met him personally. I look how you make 168. I look at him like, how? It's not possible. So it must do. Like even 175, it's not going to be easy. I mean,
Yeah.
he's that big a guy. 175 is not a walk in the park to make either. But he'll come in dehydrated. He'll walk into the ring around 190. He's going to be a big guy, a really big guy, light heavy. And let's hope he carries a bit of pop up there as well, because some of those guys, you need to dent them. Some of those guys at 175 are massive. But Tebbutt is a massive man. He really is a massive guy. So there's options out there for him, and there's good money fights as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think it's one thing being able to make, by all accounts, obviously everybody has to struggle to make weight. He may have struggled slightly more than your average fighter, but by all accounts, he made the weight pretty well. But there's one thing being able to make the weight and another thing being able to perform at the weight. So
Dude, Ferrari, no engines.
Yeah.
I've always said it. Like, they look amazing on the scales, and you see them in the ring, and like, oh my God. But there's just nothing there. There's nothing there. I mean, especially now with DAZN, I'm privy, because we stand with the fighters in the hotels, and they're almost walking around like zombies the day of the weigh-ins. I'm like, jeez. And you're supposed to then have the best performance of your life 24 hours later. How does that? It doesn't even make sense to me how fighters do it. So look, I applaud all of them. But yeah, I think he'll look better, and I think he'll be fresh at 175.
Rest of the undercard. Run us through the rest of it. I've forgotten who.
We've got Lawrence Okoli on the undercard.
Sorry, Lawrence.
Sorry, Lawrence. I mean, he only lets you come around and interview him whenever you want.
Lawrence Okoli
Okoli's on the undercard.
makes the first defense of his WBO cruiserweight titles against Dillian Prasovic. I think he's Serbian or Bosnian.
Yep.
Unbeaten, but no notable names on his resume. Mandatory defense. Obviously, Lawrence boxed for a vacant title against Krzysztof Glowacki, or whatever you want to call it. Glowacki, whatever.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I love Lawrence.
I think he's really. I mean, you shouldn't really say this, but he's really grown on me. He's one of the favorite people I come into contact with in boxing. I think he's got such an infectious energy. He wants everything. He wants to be an author. He wants to be a rapper. He wants to have a vegan McDonald's. Yep. He wants to win all the belts and stuff. Now, like Bradis
as well.
Yeah. Bradis looked like he was going to be moving up to heavyweight. Now he's boxing.
Decided to stay at cruiser.
Yeah, boxing Arthur man. He's looking to stay around and get that Jake Paul money, I think.
How random when Bradis called that Jake Paul. I was like, I don't get it. Like, I couldn't connect the dots. I was like, what are we doing? Where's this come from? I was like, someone's obviously told you to do this, and it's cringe. Stop now.
He made like several videos of it as well. Anyway,
just one.
Moving on. Lawrence Okoli, I think it's fair to say we're not really expecting Prasovic to be too much of a test. Obviously, those fights can be in their own way a banana skin.
Yeah, you've got to be careful.
But I mean, if you look at the division, you've got Gulamarian's got the WBA, obviously Ilunga Makabu, Myris Bradis is still hanging around. Get through this fight, and there's some really, really big fights for Lawrence Okoli.
Yeah, that's it. And if you look at him in sort of ranking, you think Makabu would be the one that you would attack first. I've seen Makabu up close and personal. He's improved greatly since the Tony Bellew defeat, but I still think he's the weakest. And that's no disrespect. It's just I think the others are a bit better. For Okoli, I've loved Okoli for a long time, and I know some people, he's boring, he fights, he's this. I've always said, look, once he got with Shane McGuigan, if Shane can work on that inside game, because he's got a good outside game, then there's going to be something there. I still think he needs work on it, but I've said, like, he's been able to get through British, European, and now a world title without any inside work yet. Like, there's so much left to see with Lawrence Okoli. Like, we're nowhere near seeing the finished products, and I think he admits and knows that as well. And I just love the link up with Shane. I love everything about Lawrence Okoli. I love his confidence. Some might say it's a bit of arrogance. I don't mind a bit of arrogance there. I love the fact he's doing things outside of boxing as well, because I do think boxers sometimes don't know how to switch off. It's just boxing. And I get that to an extent. No, he's got other outside interests as well. So I like him. Look, this fight's not going the distance, is it? He's going to get the stoppage, and then let's see who he calls out. I do wonder when he'll make that move to heavyweight. Sometimes I think, is he going to wait to clean up the cruiserweight division, or is he going to jump? He might jump sooner than we think, You probably know the inside scoop, don't you?
I don't think he's going to be moving up anytime soon.
Yeah, okay.
I think like now,
what is he, 6'5"? What is he? 6'4"?
Yeah, he's a big guy. He's massive. He's 6'5". I think he's got a size 15 shoe. He's massive. But yeah, I don't see him moving up anytime soon. I think particularly now Bradis has stayed. That's the fight that he wants. Ring Magazine belt. He's the number one in the division. Chris Billam-Smith's been out to spar Myris Bradis on a couple of occasions. I think they've had the inside track, and they feel like that's a really good fight for Lawrence Okoli. Obviously, Makabu's there, and I think going. How do I phrase this? after winning the world title, I think he had a good time and like.
I think he had more than
going back into
like
the
he
gym.
Was in Dubai more than he was in London.
Yeah. He came back into the gym and
heavy.
Yeah, he's a big guy. He's a heavyweight. He's like similar to Usyk in a sense of he's a heavyweight who makes cruiserweight.
That's all.
He's a big guy.
That's it. Yeah.
So, but having said that, he is very dedicated to the sport when he's in camp. He says all of the right things. He says that when he's like, I'm the champion, but when you go in the ring, the belt's up for grabs. It's vacant.
Which is true. I love that kind of attitude. Yeah.
So I do see him staying around at cruiserweight, certainly trying to unify, if not become undisputed champion, and then moving up to heavyweight. Right, we've got to get on with it because we've got a few more fights to talk about. Obviously, some heavyweight announcements. We've spoken about Dillian Whyte. We've spoken about Otto Wallin. The fight that we were expecting, or a lot of people were hearing about, was Dillian Whyte versus Chris Arreola. We've now got Dillian Whyte versus Otto Wallin. Better fight for you?
Oh, stop it. Absolutely. I remember when I heard, and I was sitting next to someone who shall remain nameless. Have I said that correct?
Remain nameless.
Remain nameless. Rename. And I was like discussing the Arreola fight, and I was like, I'm telling you now, this is not going to go down well. This person works for DAZN. I was like, this is going to get a horrible reception. They're like, what? Why? And I was like, why? Because Arreola's 41 and he got beat by Ruiz. Yes, he can sell a fight and he can talk the talk, but it's not going to get accepted. And then I remember I saw Eddie put up a picture of, Dillian Whyte is back, and everyone was like, it better not be Arreola, it better not be Arreola. So I'm happy it's not Arreola. I'm happy that Otto Wallin gets an opportunity. He's been crying out for an opportunity after not just the Tyson Fury performance, but the Dominic Brazil performance as well, where he looked pretty good. Travis Kaufman chucked in there as well. I like it, and I feel like it's a fight that the fans are going to like as well. I think both of them are going to stay in the pocket and try and take each other's heads off. I really do. And there's going to be some vulnerability with Dillian Whyte. I mean, he got knocked out hard by Povetkin. Povetkin was a shell of himself in the second fight. Like, I didn't know what Povetkin turned up. So I still think there's question marks over Dillian Whyte. And I think Otto Wallin's going to try as hard as he can to sort of ask those questions. I think it's going to be a good scrap.
Yeah, I think those vulnerabilities have always really been there for Dillian Whyte in his career, which makes him such an exciting fighter. I can't remember the last poor Dillian Whyte fight we saw. The Maris fight wasn't great, but I mean, obviously he wasn't in optimum shape at the time.
About 20 stone.
Yeah, so he wasn't in fighting shape, and that was to get himself back in the ring, so to speak. But generally speaking, you get a Dillian Whyte fight, you get a lot of action, and fans tend to go home happy.
Yeah.
But having said that, with the vulnerability and somebody like Otto Wallin, who obviously he lost to Tyson Fury, but on another day,
that fight gets stopped on a cut and he's world champion.
Potentially,
actually, sorry, not.
It wouldn't have been world champion. He would have been the new lineal champion.
Yeah.
It would have been the new lineal champion. But he would have turned the division on its head. And I was there that whole fight week. I was very impressed with Otto Wallin's demeanor. He's again sort of thing I said before the fight when I was in there. I wasn't on the green chair. I was next to the green chair, brown chair. Not allowed to sit in the green chair yet. No. But anyway, I'm working up to it. He's been around the gyms an awful lot. His amateur record, I think, is deceptive because he doesn't have an awful lot of amateur experience in Sweden. A lot of his opponents as an amateur, he's fighting good international guys. So obviously he doesn't have a particularly impressive amateur record. But I was very impressed with him in the fight week build up to the Tyson Fury fight. I still thought he would lose the fight. I didn't expect it to be as competitive as it was. And Fury had to dog it out with him, and he didn't break. He didn't break. He was in there.
All the dirty things that we know Fury can do. He's got all the dark arts of boxing, right? The elbows in the face. Literally, Fury was trying everything.
But he did a lot of the similar stuff that he'd done in the Wilder rematch. Mauling, getting forward. I remember I think it was late in the 11th round and the start of the 12th round, Fury was really punishing Wallin to the body, and it looked like he was potentially going to get the stoppage. And then Wallin landed a brilliant counter left hand that hurt Fury. So he's shown that he's a live dog throughout the whole fight.
Great fight, isn't it?
So I think that's a really good fight. I think their personalities will make quite a nice contrast in the build-up. Whyte is,
there's going to be no trash talking from Otto Wallin.
No, not at all.
Yeah, none at all. Yeah,
not at all.
And that's going to be interesting because I always feel like Whyte sometimes needs that to fire himself up. He's going to get nothing back. It's going to be. I love the fight, by the way.
I feel like if you fight Dillian Whyte and you allow him to intimidate you, which is what I felt like happened with Joseph Parker. I felt like there were times, certainly in the build-up to the fight and then within the fight, where Whyte was able to put the head in and make it a really rough fight. Yeah. Parker, I don't think really fancied that. And that's from his own admission. And Kevin Barry, of course, is now ex-trainer. Whereas I don't think Wallin's really going to be too flustered. I think he's quite a cool customer. So I think that's a really good fight. I do favour Dillian Whyte. I do favour Dillian Whyte by points, by decision. Getting behind that long jab that he's got. But again, if he switches off, these are like, people always say that so-and-so's not a puncher. They're all heavyweights. They're all like Wallin. There's an argument for him being like a top 15 guy, top 10, top 15 guy. They can all punch a little bit. And we've seen Dillian Whyte hurt in the past. So
the funny thing is, I got grilled by Dillian Whyte fans because I was trying to explain to them that for me, Dillian Whyte fighting anyone between 5 and 15, there's a problem there.
There's certainly potential.
Yeah, there's guys in there that 15, like we saw with Oscar Rivas. That was a tough fight. I think people forget that. Go back and watch that fight.
Yeah, he dropped him. He had him hurt.
Exactly, and I feel like Dillian Whyte could fight anyone within that. He could fight Hrgovic. He could even maybe fight Tony Yoka. I'm still not quite sure where he is yet. There's problems there. And this is Otto Wallin's in that, maybe at the lower end of that, but he's in that as well. So I expect Otto Wallin to cause them a lot of problems. Like you, do I expect Dillian Whyte to win? Yeah, I do. I expect him to get the job done in the end, but it's not going to be without issues. Like, I don't expect no crazy wide scorecard here. I mean, we could be talking a 116, 112 type fight. It could be that close.
I think Whyte was extremely aggressive in the Povetkin rematch, and obviously I think part of that was the state that Povetkin turned up to the fight in. I don't think he was necessarily at his best in the first fight. We obviously saw him dropped a few times, and he didn't look the old Oleksandr Povetkin until he uncorked that uppercut. But certainly in the rematch, he didn't look like the Povetkin that we've grown accustomed to seeing over the years.
That's a guy that is almost like, I had COVID, I'm not 100% yet, and look, this is just me speaking out of turn, but I want that money.
Yeah, let me get this over and done with.
Basically.
I've had a long, hard career.
And then done. That's it. Give me the 4 or 5 minutes, whatever it was, and I'm out of it.
He won an Olympic gold medal in 2000.
Was it 2004? I think it was Athens,
2004, yeah. So I'm glad. 2004.
2000 was Audley, wasn't it?
Yes. Well, that was the super heavyweight.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But yeah, Alexander Povetkin wasn't really too much of a threat, I didn't think, in the second fight. And I feel like Whyte kind of went in there and did his thing. He went and smashed him to pieces.
As he should. But he was still very reckless.
Yeah, that's the thing. But I don't necessarily feel like that's going to be the Whyte that we see against Otto Wallin. I think getting behind the jab and that's what you've really got to do in that fight, in my opinion. But again, can he do it for 12 rounds? Can he sustain that for 12 rounds? What happens when he gets hit? If Wallin lands that counter left hand that he landed on Fury, which is a really good shot, Fury rode the shot, but he was still hurt by it. Wallin was still able to jump on top of him and land a follow-up. And
didn't have a cardio issue?
No, I don't think so. The Chisora fight, they went 12 rounds together. He knocked Chisora out late in the second fight. The Rivas fight, he had to dog it out. I don't think it's a cardio issue. I think
and again, it's a
as
tough
the fight goes,
tough.
Yeah, exactly. You're in there with good guys. You're going to get hit.
Yeah, it's going to be hard.
But I think as the fights go on, maybe he gets a little bit looser defensively, and then the pockets open up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm expecting a really good fight in that. But I do expect Dillian Whyte to emerge victorious. Joseph Parker versus Derek Chisora. First of all, how did you see the first fight?
Dude, I think I gave it to Parker. But I have to be brutally honest with you, it was one of the worst fights of heavyweight fights I've seen in a long time.
I didn't mind the fight.
What?
I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it. I genuinely didn't mind. I didn't mind. Am I clamouring for the rematch?
I remember screaming because I remember I stayed up late to do a live watch along of Parker versus, was it Farr? Was it Junior Farr? Was that it?
That was in the morning.
Yeah, and I remember thinking, this is awful.
Like, yeah, that was a terrible
What's
fight.
wrong with Parker? Why doesn't he let his hands go? Like, I was screaming like, Parker, what's happened? He's not letting his hands go at all. Then in Chisora fight, I was thinking exactly the same thing. Like, let your hands go.
Yeah.
Like, what are you? Is he just too nice? Like, get aggressive, man.
We got hurt in the first 15 seconds of that fight. He was on the floor, wasn't he, Parker? So obviously he'd gone with Andy Lee, and Andy Lee had said the same thing. We wanted to be a little bit more aggressive, let his hands go. He's, good combination puncher when he let his hands go, which is what we saw later on in the fight. But yeah, I didn't think the fight was that bad. I mean, am I going to be?
To the point where I was clamoring for it to happen again. Absolutely no chance.
No. Yeah, I think I would have been fine with my life if I never got to see Parker Chisora 2. Yeah. But I didn't think the first fight was a bad fight. I felt there was a lot of ebbs and flows. I thought Chisora was really dominant in the early rounds of that fight.
I think will be different, and why I think it will be a better fight this time, although I'm not particularly interested in it to an extent, will be the fans. Like, especially if this is at the O2 Arena or the Manchester Arena.
Has it been announced, the venue?
Has it been announced?
Venue? Manchester Arena.
So you're going to get a full crowd there. Chisora just brings them out, doesn't he? Especially if it's a decent undercard. And that will be a big difference, I think. I think the fans will really get involved. And I think Chisora is really going to try and do the wind-up in the press conference as well. So I think, look, no one sells the fight better than Derek Chisora, bloody hell. So I think it's going to be interesting. But I want to see an angry Parker. I don't want to see a nice, handshaky Parker. I'm tired of it. Show me some aggression, man. Really. It's like what you said in the Dillian Whyte fight. He almost looked timid and not afraid, because he's certainly not that guy, but he almost got bullied mentally.
He did get bullied in that.
And I'm like, come on, you're a big guy as well. You're an aggressive big guy. Show us. And hopefully Andy Lee can bring that out in him, because we need to see that this time around.
I mean, we saw Andy Lee after the first fight, or the fight that they had, wasn't very happy at all with Parker's performance. Andy Lee is a very honest man, wears his heart on his sleeves, very matter of fact about things.
Very.
I thought it was a very close fight. I don't think there could have been any arguments, in my opinion, if it would have gone either way. But Andy Lee wasn't impressed with his performance, purely because Parker had Chisora hurt. And again, this is the thing, like Chisora 7.0 or whatever we're on now at Chisora.
10.
Yeah. He's, for those first 3, 4, 5 rounds, maybe 3 or 4 rounds,
be like a whirlwind.
He brings the heat in those first 3 or 4. But then after that, if you can get through that, which most people can get through that,
legit world heavyweight.
We'll get through that. Then he does start to tire. We saw it in the Usyk fight. He was hurt in the 7th round, and I didn't give him a round after the 4th round in the Usyk fight. And I felt like Parker really, could have stopped him. Even in the last round, he had Chisora hurt, and Andy Lee said after the fight, he had him hurt in the last fight, in the last round, and he backed off. He could have gone and closed the show there and then. So, having said that, I do feel that the longer this Chisora story goes on, the less we're going to get out of him in the fights. And I feel like
we know that now.
The boxer in a rematch like that will always have kind of more of an advantage going in. He knows what to expect from Chisora. He knew in the first fight, but now he's experienced it. He knows he can come out the other side, and he had Chisora hurt a few times in that fight. I think Parker will win the rematch. I think he'll win it quite convincingly.
Yeah, I'm a big Chisora fan, just because, again, I mean, we spoke about, is this Chisora 7.0? I mean, the fact that he can just keep on going, and because especially with how boxing fans are quite nowadays, you lose 1 or 2 fights, that's it, you're done, right? And the fact that he's been able to keep going, you got to give him credit for. But I think I want Parker to win, just because I want to see the Joe Joyce fight. I want to potentially see a Hrgovic fight. I feel that the stories behind those fights are a lot better than Chisora getting those fights. I don't want to see Chisora with Joe Joyce.
I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Chisora, Joe Joyce.
It would be maximum violence.
It would be,
they'd run straight at each other, and I think I obviously would make Joyce a significant favourite in that. If Joyce got behind the jab, I think he could make a really easy fight, or a really straightforward fight. But having said that, if Joyce decides to have a go with him, I think it'd be a really watchable fight. It can be really, really entertaining. Yeah. So I think win, lose or draw, Chisora's going to.
I think Chisora's obviously got a plan, regardless of it. I mean, you don't
sign with 258.
This is it, right? You don't sign a deal with AJ and 258 management if they haven't got, your next 2 years planned out, regardless of which way it turns. I mean, he's the kind of fighter now. And people will tune in regardless, because they know, like you say, for the first 4 or 5 rounds, you're going to get your money's worth. After that, it does fade, and it fades a lot. It fades very quick, by the way. Like, he literally, this is, again, no discredit to him, but it falls off a cliff very quick after the first 5 or 6 rounds, just because it goes so quick. But for the first 4 or 5, it's exciting. And look, fight's not just about what happens in the ring. It's all about the build-up as well, and he gives you entertainment in the build-up. Yeah,
he's now back with Dave Caldwell, obviously familiar surrounding, somebody he knows well. I never really quite saw the Buddy McGirt fit. I didn't really, what we've spoken about, potentially Buddy McGirt bringing to Callum Smith and what he'd brought to Sergei Kovalev in the past and Arturo Gatti and etc. Getting behind the jab, using your boxing skills. I didn't really see that.
Chisora, actually, honestly, it's almost... It's a stage when
get him in shape and wind him up and let him go. And
I remember when Bernard Hopkins used to talk about that as well. Like, obviously, someone as experienced as Bernard, it wasn't necessarily a trainer, and he had a great trainer in Nazim Richardson. It was almost a case of just a voice in the corner. That's all I need. I need a voice in the corner. You're not going to change what Chisora is at this time. Chisora's that peekaboo style was his peekaboo style. You're not going to change it. If you're trying to make Chisora, bounce on his toes and move around like Muhammad Ali, then you're in the wrong sport. He ain't going to do that. And I think he just wants a voice, and Dave Caldwell's a nice voice to have. Dave Caldwell's a great guy, and I think that's all it is, really.
Veering away from heavyweights, let's talk about a couple of other fights quickly while we still have a little bit of time in here. Terence Crawford versus Sean Porter. Obviously, that's been talked about for a long time now. We finally got a date, November the 20th.
Yeah.
In Las Vegas. How do you see that fight going?
Crawford. I love Sean. I remember when Sean was going to fight Errol, and I was like, I made a video about it, so it's out there, people. I was like, oh, Sean is going to cause Errol problems. Like, Sean, it's no easy work for anyone, right? And that fight was a split decision in the end. But I think Crawford needs this fight, and he needs to make a statement badly. I almost don't feel like a W is enough. Like, he could win, and it's a close fight. I feel like, no. You need to make a statement, because there's people like myself saying you're the best welterweight in the world, and I get shut down all the time, and rightly so. But Errol Spence fans are like, well, look at the CVs, dude. He needs to make a statement, and I think he will make a statement. I think he could make this wide. He might even get a late start. That's how confident I am about Crawford winning this one. But I love it. I do love the fight. Is it what we want in terms of Crawford versus Spence? No. But providing that Errol does recover, and fingers crossed he does recover well, it at least leads up to potentially a Crawford versus Spence fight. But I think Crawford's just going to be too much for Sean Porter. But I've said that about... I've kind of dissed Sean in the past, and he always proved me wrong, so who knows?
Yeah, he's always competitive. Again, like we spoke about Dillian Whyte. When was the last boring Sean Porter fight that you saw? There isn't. He always brings a lot of action.
Formella, maybe? Wasn't that exciting, Ben Sebastian?
Yeah, he was just going and getting... I mean, like, with respect to Sebastian Formella.
Guys.
I think when you look at his resume, and he's boxed Brooke, Berto, Danny Garcia,
Crazy.
Thurman, Spence, all of those guys, Devin Alexander, Adrian Broner.
Crazy.
Like... Paulie Malignaggi.
Yeah,
it's so unfair to point out the Sebastian Formella fight. But yeah, I think Crawford rightfully goes into it as a favourite.
Yeah.
However,
here we go.
I think Sean Porter is by far and away the best opponent that Terence Crawford has faced in his entire career.
You are correct, sir. I was going through it in my head, 135, 141. You are correct.
So I'm really interested in the fight. I think Crawford is rightfully a favourite, but he's, in my opinion, I don't think he's boxed anybody really that close to the level of a Sean
Where does
Porter.
this mystique come from then? Because I'm a massive Crawford fan. And I think,
the guys he's beaten them really well. There's no disputing that. He beat Yuriorkis Gamboa really well, but Yuriorkis Gamboa won a gold medal at the Olympics as a flyweight. He was at his best as a professional as a featherweight. Terence Crawford was, I looked this up the other day, he was 152 pounds in the ring on fight night at lightweight. Gamboa would have been about, one, he's not a lightweight, and two, he's not going to be putting that much weight on. And Gamboa had a lot of success in that fight. Gamboa was a great fighter over the years, had been a great fighter.
Like it's like Crawford's got this dog in him that when he decides, okay, obviously looks switch hitter, power in both hands. When he decides to go, he seems to be able to go very quickly, and that's what I like about him. But you're right. Look, Sean's gonna put his head in. Sean's one of the most aggressive fighters. It's a nasty night's work with Sean Porter. Like you're going in there and it's gonna hurt. But I do remember what Danny Garcia said. Danny Garcia was being interviewed. I don't know who by, and he was like, Sean doesn't punch. Like he said, it's all good and it looks aggressive, but he can't punch. And
I watched that interview on Fight Hype.
Was it Fight Hype?
Yeah,
and he says he can't
Garcia
punch.
was talking about Errol Spence, and it was a really good interview.
Yeah, good interview, right? And I remember thinking, if that's the case, then it's going to be difficult to get rid of or hurt Crawford, because I almost felt like he can punch, but if he can't, and I guess it's to an extent, right? What's your punch resistance? But I think Crawford's not been in too many fights where the resistance should be gone. And I think that might be a problem for Sean if he can't crack Crawford.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting fight. I do expect Crawford to win the fight, but I do expect Porter to give him a lot of problems. I really do. I really think Porter's going to give him problems. Elsewhere, super-middleweight undisputed showdown. We spoke about it already. Canelo versus Caleb-Plant. I think we both think something quite similar with regards to this fight. I certainly think Canelo Alvarez goes into the fight as a sizable favourite. Do you give Plant any chance or no chance? A little bit?
No. 5%. You know what it is, Canelo... It's almost got to this, maybe this is a bit of an exaggeration, but when Mayweather was picking his opponents and he was like, Mayweather's going to win. Like, it's almost like it'll be a massive upset if anyone beats Canelo. The way Canelo's ran through these 168 pounders is, honestly, Callum Smith, say what you want, but he was the ring recognized number one at 168 pounds, unbeaten. He barely won a round. He smashed Billy Joe.
He did win a round.
There you go.
I don't think.
He smashed Billy Joe Saunders' face. He broke his face. Like, he literally has won belts to belts to belts. And now with Caleb-Plant, I mean, Caleb's good, but he's nothing like he's not been anywhere near the ring with anything like Canelo. Canelo is a frightening prospect right now. He really is. Even when you watch him on the heavy bag, I've never seen him out of shape. He just always looks like he's ready to go. I mean, yes, there's some things that he's not great. Like some people might say his foot movement ain't great, but he knows how to close the ring off. When he was able to take GGG's best punches, that's when I was like, I'm done. Like because I was a massive GGG fan, still am. And when he was able to, even in the first fight, take those punches, I was like, what's going on now? How have you been able to withstand? And GG's got that weird kind of technique, and I was like, he withstood that, and I was like, that's it, I'm done. He's going to be unbeatable for a while, and so far so good.
Yeah, he's really developed as a fighter. I mean, you mentioned about not being able to cut the ring off. We obviously saw the Mayweather fight, but Mayweather didn't run from him. Didn't use an awful lot of lateral movement. It was a lot of very, very, beautiful defensive work. Really sensational performance. But we saw it in the Arislandi Lara fight. We saw Austin Trout give him some problems. Saw Amir Khan's movement give him slight problems. Well, we gave him problems until he knocked him out. Yeah. But that's a long time ago.
Look at those names as well. Like, say what you want about Amir Khan going up to middleweight, which was a bit silly, but it's almost like, what's that? Is it the Highlander where you take someone's head off and get all the power? Yeah. It's almost like everyone he fights, he's taking something from it. Yeah. Like he's learning something. He's doing stuff.
Well, that's the thing. He doesn't struggle to cut down the ring as much anymore. I still don't think it's necessarily his forte.
No, it's not.
The Kovalev fight, I felt like he could have cut down the ring a lot better in that fight at times.
Heavy though for me in that fight.
Again, you're 175 pounds, and Sergey Kovalev, is a good fighter. Obviously, coming off the back of the yard fight, so he wasn't, in his own opinion. What did he say? That anybody who thought I was going to win was an ignoramus.
yeah. Basically, it's like if you thought I was going to win this fight, then you're an idiot. On you, yeah.
Oh, cheers, Sergey. Somebody's out. Well, a friend of mine. So I bet on Kovalev. And you see all of those quotes attributed to him afterwards. I think on paper, if you're looking to build a fighter, you'd still want to go for somebody with good lateral movement, with decent pop, which I think Caleb-Plant does have. Yeah, I think he has similar characteristics to what Billy Joe Saunders had, which gave Billy Joe Saunders pockets of success for sure
100%.
In the Canelo-Alvarez fight. But it's sustaining it over the 12 rounds for Caleb-Plant. I think in the Truax fight, which was earlier on this year, I think it was January this year, he looked great for 4 rounds and then kind of took his foot off the gas and kind of laboured in the end to a decision win against Caleb Truax. Yeah, and I just see Canelo forcing him to work in those first 3 or 4 rounds and then really picking up the pace in the middle rounds.
And then it's also a big fight mentality as well, and I think people sometimes don't add that into the equation. How are you going to deal with sort of the press, the big fight week, the crowd, which are going to be, I mean, Caleb-Plant's got his own fan base, but it's nothing like Canelo. It's going to be 99% Canelo fans there. How are you going to deal with all that as well? There's a lot to deal with when it comes to fighting Canelo. You have to do this press, and you're trying to cut weight, but you got to do that media. And like, I've not been used to this before. I mean, 5 people turn up with cameras to my fights. Now it's literally the world media. Everyone's going to be there. I mean, sorry. I like it. I like Caleb-Plant's, as a person. I think him and his wife Jordan Plant, who does the interviews, seem like a great couple. I don't know why I'm saying all this, but I just add it in anyway.
He does have a great story. Unfortunately lost his child. So he has a great story, and you always wish the best for somebody 100%. like Caleb-Plant. And he brings his own audience to the table. He's one of the most viewed fighters on Fox. He is a very capable fighter. Similarly to the next fight, which we're going to talk about, which is Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall. I think Caleb-Plant is not unfortunate, but like the fact that he's fighting not only another champion, but an elite level top,
pound for pound,
the best fighter in the world. Yeah. I think that is kind of, you don't ever want to write somebody off, but because he's facing somebody of such a high level, I do find it difficult to find a path to victory for him.
Smith? How would that have gone in your head? Like how far? Like it is like the reason I asked that is because the way in which Canelo got rid of them. Like how far is he ahead of or below Billy Joe and Callum Smith?
I think styles make fights, obviously. I think Callum Smith had the best chance to hurt Canelo, potentially utilise that size and strength. Whereas, as I say, I think Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb-Plant have a lot of similar characteristics. Yeah. Good lateral movement, very skilled boxers. But you mentioned the big fight experience when you're Canelo and you've been in with all of those, the elite level fighters over the years. He has become a different proposition. He's not the same fighter he's not really even the same fighter that boxed Callum Smith.
100%.
So
100%.
Within 11 months, he's going to have won all of the belts at 168 pounds, and he would have beaten 3 champions to do it.
I think Sky or somewhere, maybe I saw it on Twitter. I think it was like 7 years ago that he beat Josecito Lopez or something. I remember thinking, that was 7 years ago. I remember how good I thought he looked then. And all of a sudden, he's bigger now. He's stronger. I mean, that Reynoso camp, you know what I mean?
Oh, let's not get sued on the first.
No, I'm not doing that. But I'm just saying, I mean, it's a good camp, right? Everyone on there looks like they're in great shape. But everyone just has so much confidence in that camp. There's world champions in there. It must be weird when you're training and you look to your left and there's Andy Ruiz. You look forward, Valdez, Martinez. It's a great camp of good fighters. And then Reynoso. So, it's a strong camp. It's a strong Canelo. And right now, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think who I think could cause him problems at 168. Maybe Benavidez, potentially. Big, strong guy. Yeah. Good old Mexican war. In Mexico, remember that? Imagine that at the Azteca Stadium. But Canelo-Plant, no.
Yeah, that's a potential big fight.
That's a big fight.
I don't think Benavidez is ready yet. I think they're looking at... I don't know who they're looking at for next for Benavidez.
I think there's some rumours about Charlo. There was a lot of talk about Charlo going up to 168 and potentially that fight happening, but I'm not quite sure what's going on with Benavidez.
That interests me.
Yeah.
I'd be interested. I'd watch that.
Both Charlos have got vulnerability now, but I think they've slipped a lot. I know we're moving away again, apologies, but both Charlos, for me, look like they're not what I thought they... Look, they're world champions. Who am I to say? But I thought maybe 3-4 years ago, these guys were going to be literally done.
I think Jamel's
the best, but I thought Jamal lost his last fight.
Yeah, I thought he lost his last fight as well. Yeah. I thought Castagna won the fight. Yeah. But having said, Castagna's a really good fucking fighter. So now it's an undisputed title fight.
What do we expect?
The other guys in there doing stuff too.
He's good as well.
Jamal, I don't think has had the opportunities necessarily. I don't think he's had the big names. Unfortunately, I thought he was very good against Sergey Derevianchenko. But obviously, Derevianchenko is somebody we've seen who's
tough, but
he's known for his losses.
Yeah,
he
stopped. GGG.
Yeah, but ultimately lost to Danny Jacobs.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've really had the opportunity to see the best of them. But I'd still like to see Jamal Charlo versus Gennady Golovkin. I think that's a really good fight. I think to see the best of Jamal Charlo, you need somebody who's going to stand there and fight with him, or
And I think still do that.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. Final fight, I've just mentioned it there. Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall, December the 18th. Same night as Parker Chisora, so you're not going to be watching it because you're going to be working.
Damn. I like that. Well, I don't even know my schedule, but I kind of know, if that makes any sense. Like, oh, yeah, you're right. I'm going to be doing that.
Similar to Canelo-Plant versus Canelo Alvarez. Obviously, you've got a very capable fighter. I think Jack Catterall was being very much overlooked in the fight from a sense of how good of a fighter and how crafty and how tricky he is. The bad news for Jack Catterall is that he's fighting the number one in the division and a pound for pound top 5, top 6 fighter in Josh Taylor. So, what do you make of that one?
I almost feel sorry for... Well, I don't feel sorry for him. He's got a world title shot. He's got the chance to become the undisputed.
Yeah, he's got for all the belts.
For all the marbles. It's good pay.
And he deserves a shot as well.
He deserves. I mean, look, if it wasn't for him, the Ramirez fight wouldn't have happened, right? He could have really kind of put his foot down and said, no, I want my opportunity. But he kind of said, okay, look, have your opportunity, Josh. And if you win, please give me opportunity. And Josh has done that. Josh is just too good right now. I'll be honest with you. I mean, even the Ramirez fight, he shocked me, like, of how good he actually is. I mean, I feel like I've slept on him a little bit, and I shouldn't have, because the Prograis wins there and the Baron Chick win and all. He's a very good fighter, but I almost feel like he's super confident. He's got that little spite to him as well, which I love. The arrogance, the spite. Some people don't like it. I love it. I don't care. I absolutely love it. Unless he takes his foot, or unless he thinks about other things after Jack Catterall, then that's the only way I see him losing. That's it. I mean, obviously, there's the Manny Pacquiao thing going back and forth with Freddie Roach. That isn't going to happen now. No. I would love to see, I'd love, and no disrespect to Jack, sorry to move on, I'd love to see him fight Broner. And the reason I say that, random, right?
Josh Taylor?
Yeah, the reason I say that is because...
Why would you want to do that to Broner, man?
Exactly, that's the reason. Because I almost feel like he needs that fight in America where the guy's going to come and chat crap, and it's going to sell the fight, and the American public are going to turn up in their droves. I still think they'll do that for Broner, and he will bash him up. And I like
I
that.
don't want to see that fight. That's a waste of my time, Ade. You want me to stay up until 5 o'clock in the morning to watch Josh Taylor beat up Adrian Broner?
Broner would think, Broner being Broner would think he can beat Josh Taylor.
Fuck out of it, man.
He will think he can beat Josh Taylor. And I love it. I'd rather see that
Josh Taylor, if he moves up, he's going to box. I think will box your Dennis Ugas. I think that's a good fight.
He put him down, didn't he?
That's a story that I'd heard previously on several occasions. And obviously we saw Ugas had actually tweeted about it as well. Josh went out there to spar Sean Porter as well, the Porter High Performance Institute, whatever he's got. He's got his own setup out there. It's apparently lovely, and he's been several times. But I think that's a good fight. I think that would be a good fight. But having said that, let's not look past Jack Catterall because
sorry, Jack.
Yeah, you said, well, if Josh Taylor doesn't look past him, but I'm going to look past him right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think Jack Catterall is a crafty fighter. Like people forget, like he's been around the gyms and been around the block for a long time. He's sparred with Miguel Cotto, Floyd Mayweather. He's an underrated fighter. When he was coming through, a lot of hype around Jack Catterall, those early kind of Box Nation days. I think that he's got the potential to make it a little bit awkward for Josh. In those first 3 or 4 rounds, I think Jack Catterall will be very crafty. He's got good power with a left hand. Obviously, we've seen Josh Taylor's got an excellent chin behind all of the skills that he's got, and his ability. You can also take a shot. But yeah, I do feel that Josh Taylor will be too good on the night. But I think that's more of a reflection on just how good Josh Taylor is as opposed to Jack Catterall.
100%. This is no dig on Jack. I mean, but you're talking, and it's very similar at a smaller scale to what you spoke about with Canelo, whereby you're picking up those wins and you're learning in every fight as well. And you look at Josh Taylor's CV, and the Prograis fight was tough in America. That could have gone to Prograis, by the way. You speak to some I don't think so.
No,
some Americans think. But
neither did Prograis on the night until he checked Twitter.
Yeah, now on Twitter he'll say he won the fight. But it's just win after win after win against unbeaten fighters, good fighters that are coming to win. And you're talking about a guy now that, for me, pound for pound, number 6.
He's up there, isn't he? Top
7.
5, top 6.
I'm not having. Yeah, I think anything less than that, then hand in your boxing card. He's that solid right now, and it's going to be difficult for Jack to win here because this is a Josh as well that can take a punch. It's not like a Josh that can only box on the outside. Josh can box inside. That uppercut against Ramirez, he can do everything. Josh has got everything. He did come into camp looking a bit heavy. I have to admit, when I saw that, I was like, "Geez, dude, you've had a good little break."
He's the undisputed champion.
I know, but but I'm still very. You're right, but I still want to see you in shape. And that's a problem that I have. Because maybe it's years of watching Mayweather.
Yeah, you want to see him in shape. You
want
him to fight Adrian Broner.
It's just a bit of money. He had a bit of a belly, but no, look, Josh is far too good.
He's never going to box Adrian Broner. Adrian Broner's a PBC. Although Adrian Broner's talked about fighting everywhere at the minute. But Josh was. I actually messaged Ben Davison and said, I hope Josh isn't. He won't watch this. I messaged Ben Davison and said, "Who's that new super middleweight you got back?" And he was like, "What super middleweight?"
Teofimo Lopez.
Okay, so we are all assuming Josh Taylor does win. Assuming Josh Taylor does win.
What's the bigger fight for him at 140 or 147? Crawford or Teofimo Lopez?
What's a bigger fight? I mean, probably Crawford. Probably a bigger fight. But if I'm Josh Taylor, which I'm obviously not, then I would want to stay at 140 and take those 135s who are coming up.
100%.
Teofimo Lopez is going up.
Want to challenge me? Come.
Haney's going up.
Yep.
If they want a world title shot, there's only one guy who's got all the belts. So I would much prefer to see Josh Taylor versus Teofimo Lopez.
I love that.
I'm all about that fight. God. I think that would be a brilliant build up as well.
Oh, that would be incredible. That fight.
And I do think Teofimo Lopez will make pretty swift work of Kambosos and then move up to 140. I think. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't make the weight.
Wouldn't surprise.
I really
me.
wouldn't.
It's been so long.
He's so big.
Remember when he had that when he was next to Conor Ben, and even Conor was like,
"He's massive,
bigger than Conor."
He's like
Conor couldn't understand it.
Pit bull.
Yeah, Conor couldn't understand he was bigger than him. Conor was like, "How's he bigger than me?"
And he's a sensational talent. I think the build up to that fight, they're both with top rank, easy fight to make. I think
such a great fight.
I think that would be a really good fight.
Such a great fight.
Okay, well, we are about there. We have 9 minutes to go, so we're going to have to clear up a little bit first. But as always, real pleasure having you back on the new and improved Boxing Social podcast.
Fantastic in here. Well done. It really is good. I've sort of set up my studio, so I'm going to go and rip it up and start again.
Well, hopefully, I think we're going to be doing up the back wall.
Yeah.
So we had a boxing social backdrop to put on the back wall, but it was ordered in 7 foot by 7 foot and sent to my house. So currently it's in my bathroom.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, but once we get the whole place kitted out, yeah, I think we'll be looking good. We've got some posters, some that.
You're doing really big things. It's really good.
Oh,
and yeah, I'd like to come monthly. We'll see what we can do.
Monthly? We're probably going to be in here 3 days a week.
Really?
I think, yeah. So there's going to be a higher demand to get you back on here now, Ade.
Obviously, because this was so good.
Yeah, and your big profile.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So there we go. But yeah, thank you very much.
One-bedroom council flat, though.
It's a lovely one bed. But thanks very much for stopping by on the Boxing
Thanks
Social podcast, and thank you for returning to the Boxing Social podcast, episode 20. We're back. We're bigger and better than ever. Remember to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications for more Boxing Social content from me, Rob Tebbutt, from him, Ade Oladipo. Thanks very much for stopping by, and we'll catch you soon.